Hey everyone, and welcome back. We are going to get into some fun stuff. We're going to start putting together a lot of the different things that we learned about. I know we've been kind of doing that already, but we learned about things like carousels and paging and swiping and dragging a little bit, but I actually want to really focus in on like swiping and those types of gestures when it comes to looking through maybe different images or even like dragging something across like a column when I think of things like Trello or one of those Atlassian products like Jira. So one thing I really want to get into, and we're going to do this together, we're going to actually design together a little bit here. I want to actually create like a card. And when I think about a card, I think about like an Airbnb card or something like that, like a card for a rental, whatever rental site you use. But let's go ahead and actually do that right now. So I have a couple of images over here. I know it's a bit messy, so it's not looking the greatest, but what I want to do is I actually want to piece these images together. So we can do that pretty easily just by kind of throwing them together. And your design file is already going to be ready for you. You'll be able to see what the final product looks like if you want to move ahead a bit. But I want to actually show you exactly, the design process that went into this. So I have all these images together perfectly. I'm just going to put them in a frame. So you can right click and go into frame selection. So that's perfect. We can call this images. It may be named something slightly different for you. So I have it set to auto layout, so nothing's going to change in regards to the image placement. They're going to be perfectly side by side. That's kind of like the step one. We got some images. Okay. Now I have a couple other UI elements here. I have that carousel that you've kind of seen me use in the past, where we have like the active dot, and we're not going to really put too much thought into, having like a state in between to let users know they clicked anything, especially when we're dealing with smaller cards like this. The user won't even be able to see that most of the time. So we just want to give them a little bit of an understanding in terms of, okay, this is how it's going to be placed. And this is how it's going to look. It's just going to be there to give them an understanding of which image they are in the grand scheme of all the images. So we can do this a little bit differently here. We can actually just select everything. We're just going to select everything, and we're going to frame this as well. And we can, manipulate that frame if we want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to bring this down, and I'm going to kind of put this in the right corner. So I'm using the arrow keys to do this. And I like to just do like a shift and a shift. So it gives me a nice nudge. And, just for everyone that is pretty interested in some of these other things like the amounts that you move with and shift with, you can find that in this area here in your preferences. If you take a look at your nudge amount, I have it set to 10. You can have it set to anything. And that basically means that whenever you move it, with shift, you will move 10 pixels. So some people like to have it like at 4 or 8 or 16, depending on the pixel points that you're moving by. I generally have it set to 8, but that's totally fine for here. So let's move this one. So these are my carousel dots, and that's kind of like the center of this area. Now, one thing we do want to do is we want to make sure, so I'm going to hold Command while I'm moving this so the other elements inside don't get squished, because if you can see, everything's moving with the top or bottom. And that's because if I click on the images, they have the constraints set to top and left. So we are going to just hold Command while we do this and go right to the top, and we're going to clip this content because we're not going to show all the images. We just want to show the first one because we want to be able to actually swipe between all these images as well. So I'm going to make sure that's centered, which it is. And I'm gonna go all the way down. So now it's at the bottom and I'll just press 10. I mean, you can do 20, 10 is fine. And here we can go ahead and maybe change the opacity a bit. And I think that is going to be fine for now. It's going to look better on darker pages. It's just because this image is a little bit bright. So that's fine. Okay, so we'll just call this carousel container. Like I said, yours may be named differently, but I totally want you guys all to try your best and actually create this with me as well. So it doesn't even need to be something like a home, like website thing, like a realtor.ca or Zillow or apartments.com or whatever you're using. It can be anything you want. So right now I have the price and we can just go like 28 pixels. Oh, maybe that's a little too big, but 24, doesn't matter. Make that nice and bold, medium maybe. Okay, so we'll just keep that there and don't worry about having these things perfectly done. Perfect. So we'll keep that. So we'll just say like 2 beds and we'll create another one. So I'm gonna Command C, Command V and do that. And we'll do like 1 bath and then we'll just drag a duplicate over. And we'll just make up an amount of square footage for a home. This home is actually pretty large, it looks like. So, and then I'm gonna actually combine all these into a frame. So I'm just gonna use my shortcut to do that, which is Option Command G. But you can right click and do that yourself as well. So I have them all in a frame and I'll just call this details. I think details is a perfect name. And auto layout, perfect. We have an auto layout frame and we are just going to make sure that they have the spacing that we like. So I think 12 pixels is totally fine. And then we are going to need to create maybe another option here for the address. So regular, maybe even light is fine. Maybe set to 75%. Maybe that's a little too thin. Maybe we set this to 50. That's better. Okay, so another thing you can do is you can use a plugin. I like to use this one called Content Reel. Really helpful for filling in content. So I can just literally click on my text layer and go into like a US full address and it will automatically fill it like it should have. Let's see that again. Let me see. I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. So we have a full address. So we have 4517 Washington Avenue, Manchester, Kentucky. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select all of these different elements. I'm going to group them together into a frame. So I did Option G, and I'm going to just call this House Details. So to easily rename, you can do Control R, Command R while you're on top of the layer here. And here we can make this an auto layout again. And this is going to really help us with things like responsiveness if we're really interested in that. So we can even group these ones into another frame if we want the spacing to be a certain sizing in between these text layers because it is looking a little off. So we can do that. We're going to do auto layout as well. And we can just drop that to like 8. You can even do even more. We can do 4. So the first one with all of these will be 12. Perfect. And that's looking beautiful. Okay, we just got to make sure that everything is filling the container. This is something I like to do as well because the container is only going to be able to, be responsive if we do that. We don't have to worry about it being, too responsive when it comes to this secondary layer of information, but it definitely helps. Okay, now let's get into making this a background. So we have background color, that's totally fine. Let's think about the spacing around. I think 16 pixels is perfect as well. So we have it over here, lined up perfectly. And now we can actually take the carousel container and the house details. So we have the house details together, and we can group those in a frame. And you're probably thinking, why are there so many frames? And this is just to make sure that everything is really neat. And this is something I do a lot of. I'm personally passionate about stuff like that, making sure that everything is in its place. Maybe 10 pixels. That's looking beautiful. So there's kind of our little listing here. And we can even do auto layout if we want. So that's perfect. If we do fill the container, and this one is fill the container, we can start to actually create a beautiful experience. Oops. If this one's top and right already, and this is the image like that. And let's take a look. So we've created this beautiful container here. Okay, so I think this is what we're gonna roll with when it comes to the design. Super simple, and it's going to be perfect for actually just animating in general. Let's just tighten up some of these things here. Make them look as nice as we possibly can get them to look in the short amount of time that we have. I think that's actually looking really nice. I'm not gonna lie. Love it. Maybe even a little bit less. Maybe 40. Okay, I'm a stickler for the details. Okay, so now we've designed this together pretty quickly. We've gone ahead, made sure that all our frames are perfectly together. We have a good structure. You can tell we have a really nice structure within our layers. So that's going to be really helpful, not just for prototyping, but also for designing in the future. You want to keep all your layers as nice as possible and as neat as possible, especially when you name them as well. So I've had some of these already named, but this is going to really help you move quicker when you design. And in our next video, we're actually going to go through dragging some of these images and moving the carousel dot, but also getting the images to come in and swipe as well. So it's going to be really helpful for you if you want to create something like this, or if you're thinking about creating another carousel where you click and cause the image to move. So stay tuned. Maybe show me what you've actually come up with for your design and what you plan to animate. I would love to see it. And this is our design for dragging.